Hello, I'm Paul Davis and I work for the Technical Department of Lite Launcher UK, and what I'm about to show you now is our Lite Launcher kit, which basically converts the world famous, very well made RRT hand launcher into a fully functioning remote control dummy launcher. This operates wirelessly out to a range of about 150 metres, fires a dummy, gives you no recoil issues. It opens up all sorts of scenarios for training your dog, and as good as this piece of kit is, this does away with the limitations. Okay. First part of the conversion we do to the head. Make sure the head's unloaded, no blanks whatsoever in there. Make sure you're happy with the overall condition of this launcher head before you start the conversion. Make sure the pins are all still in place, everything works as it should. Barrel's safe, holes are not unnecessarily worn. These heads go on many years. This is a new head, quite recent. You might find yours has got a white washer here rather than a black one. The grip probably is going to be the same or similar. The pull knob on the end there, that'll be quite similar throughout the whole range and age process. First thing we're going to do is remove the rubber grip, then the washer. Relatively simple. These are only push fit on, but they do grab the steel quite well. Underneath that is a steel tube with a little plastic end cap. My advice, because we're going to throw this away and we're going to throw the washer away, is quite simple. Use a Stanley knife, sharp craft knife. Easiest way to remove the rubber grip is to simply push it in, pull it down the entire length like that, right to the end. That's off. It's as simple as that. You can try pulling it off with rubber gloves and everything else, but in fairness, that is the simplest and easiest way to remove that rubber grip. Okay. Next, we'll remove this washer. To ease this washer off, it can be quite a tight, snug fit, should we say. What we don't want to do is rip it out and rip this old end plug with it. So if you want to get to the end, if you just sort of go gingerly with it, it'll come off simply enough, and then we can discard. Right, brilliant. So we're down to this stage now. Now we want to get to this stage, which is removal of this. Quite simple. I'd say simple. If you got a pair of pliers, it might be good just to put them on that shaft there, not too tight, and you can pull that back, and what you can see is you've got a pull knob there, you've got a spring, and you've got this top hat washer. This top hat washer is what causes all the fun. It's quite a simple little pressed steel cap, but to get them off can be a little bit of work in that sense. They're not hard to get off, it's just all down to method. Some of them pop off straight away, others take a little bit more nibbling. What I recommend is a pair of these are sort of side cut pliers. You tend to find these in toolboxes. You can use ordinary pliers, it's the same effect really, just that these tend to be able to grab it a little bit lower, do the job a little bit quicker. If you look at this top hat clip, basically it's got two little sort of dents in it. Those little dents penetrate into a little groove that's been machined into this shaft. All you've got to do basically is bend those up and that top will come off. It's not that hard a job. So find where they are, put them upwards, grab them with your pliers and roll that way, like that, and just keep picking at it all the time. As I say, some of them are quite easy, some of them like that. That was a good bite, you see. Just keep rolling around it and going at it. Nearly there now. Some of it's come away. There you go, and off. And I reckon that's probably the hardest part of the whole conversion. Okay, next remove this knob and spring. Again, discard all this. So now we're into this position here where we've got a bare launcher. It's fully assembled obviously, but remove the grip, remove the washer at the end, and we remove the pull knob. And now the next conversion is to mount the washer, the stainless steel washer, and the rubber coupling bush onto this, and I'll show you that one right now. Okay, next stage on this is to mount the stainless steel washer, followed by this rubber bush affair. Now the rubber bush affair, as you can see, has got a slightly wider end, almost a little bit top hat in itself. This wider end goes onto the launcher first, so this end here, the wider end ends up onto the face of the washer. Okay, that's the first thing. In your kit you should have a long thin tube, and you should have a small flat tube. The long thin tube is to fit over the shaft, and all it does is means that this will stand up, so it's you know, on a steady surface. If you've got a vise, if you've got anything else, a workbench or something, feel free to put that on, and basically just anything that will hold it, because what you're going to do is you're going to use a mallet or something similar to knock this bush onto the end. Okay. Okay, just adjust the camera to a wider angle so you can see what's going on. So we've got the black plastic tube over the end. That keeps it up, means it'll stand up on a flat surface. That's the design of this really, so you can do it on a sort of kitchen worktop or something like that with very, very limited tools. If you've got better tools, obviously we recommend that you use them, or better methods, no problem at all. First and foremost, a ring of your provided glue. Put the glue right on that shoulder there, in a full bead, a good generous bead, going right round like that. It's absolutely ideal. Completely encircling it. Then your rubber, stainless steel washer, put that on, give it a little spin. And what I'd recommend is then let you stand that there and leave that for 20 minutes and come back to it. That will give that time to sort of stick down and provide a better fix for that washer. Okay, so we'll come back to this in 20 minutes. Okay, so here we are, 20 minutes on, that's now stuck firm. Put it on somewhere good, nice good firm surface. Get your rubber bush, as I say, the thicker end goes on first because that's going to mate up with the washer. Just tease it over the end like that. Ideal tool, rubber mallet. You can use a hammer, cider hammer, you could probably use a decent block of wood or something relatively heavy, but if you've got something like this, obviously that's easy enough tool to acquire. Use that one, and what we do is we just tap the rubber bush down until we just about reach the firing pin, so it goes down about just over halfway initially. Once you see that firing pin grinning through at the top, just stop. That leaves it so far there, about 50% or just over. Then put on your thicker plastic coupling on the top. What this does, this acts as a bridge between that and the mallet to stop the mallet hitting the firing pin in. That's all that's doing. So just hold that secure there, like that, again, and just start to tap. Don't take it all the way down. What we're going to do is we're going to stop at about half an inch, 15mm from the finish. Just like that. So now we've got this gap here. As you may have guessed, what we're going to do is put some glue on the face of that washer there. Again, a nice good bead right the way around. A few little dabs on the shaft, won't do any harm at all. The glue's quite slow setting, but obviously we don't want to leave it too long. Put your plastic cap back on again, and then finish off. What we're going to do now is send that rubber bung all the way down to the face of that washer, where it will make a nice secure seat. So in a couple of steady movements right through. And there we have it. What you should end up with is the stainless washer tight up against that casting, and the rubber bung tight up against that stainless steel washer. The end piece there is a slight gap, that's okay, that's expected. Make sure that this end plastic cap has stayed in and everything else. You can now remove the plastic end structure, because the next piece we're going to do is be putting on the converter at the end. Okay, and that's it so far. Right, last stage of conversion to the head is to put on the cocking adapter, spring and that little grub screw. And obviously there's your cocking rod. There's a supplied Allen key which fits that grub screw, just in case you haven't got one to hand. Hopefully we've thought of everything there. Ideally what we're going to do is we're going to put this on. If you have a look at this, it's got a silver end and it's got a black end. The anodizing is left in there, it's been milled out on the inside there. The silver end is going to go on first, so the silver end is going to go onto this shaft. If you look at this shaft, I'll pull this out, you might find this easier just to sort of hold it with pliers. It makes life a little bit easier because it can make your fingers ache. If you look at this shaft, you'll see it's got a little sort of groove milled into it. What this grub screw is going to do is it's going to go fit through one of those holes there, and the point of it is going to go right into that groove, right into the centre of that groove, and that locks it up really well. It stops it moving up and down the shaft, as well as giving it force, you know, from the actual action of the grub screw itself. I find if you can get that grub screw point into that shaft, things work an awful lot better. Right, and to do that, quite simple. Get your grub screw fitted onto your Allen key, like so. First on is your spring, so put the spring on just down there and out of the way. Then you fit this, as I say, silver side first, and if you push it in, very hard to see this on camera, but you can see the groove, and if you place that groove central into that hole there, it's the first hole we're going to put the grub screw in. It'll only go on so far, this fitment anyway, but it's the first hole there, this one, that we're going to put the grub screw in. But if you line it up, you can actually see that groove right in the centre of that, and that's absolutely perfect. So then you get your grub screw, tighten it in, you will actually feel it, that's gone straight in there. Okay, tighten that up, pliers, and now you can, that needs to be quite tight, so as tight as you can make it with the Allen key. That's it, you don't want that falling off, so you end up with that affair, basically spring, the converter, and that all moving in that direction now, quite free moving. When it's fitted inside the launcher, then this comes through, convert at 90 degrees, that screws into the back hole, as you can see there. So you can imagine that's when that's inside the tube, that's your cocking action, that's what you reach this point with this. Okay, so the next action is to show you how to fit the head. Right, last stage for the head is to obviously introduce the head into the tube. Easy enough process. Only thing to remember is regarding your release catch, it's there, is line up your release catch with those two holes in the cocking rod adapter. One of them's obviously got the silver grub screw in, the other one's got a blank hole. The blank hole is where this cocking knob is going to screw through the slot, put into that screw there. Simple enough. You're provided with 3 screws. There's 3 screws. There's one tap hole here and 2 on either side. These screws just need to go in till they touch the surface. They don't need to be tight. They're not doing any major holding force. They're basically just stopping this from rotating in that axis. The whole thing when it fires is obviously keep trying to push itself back into the launcher anyway. So these 3 screws, all they do is hold it sturdy and hold it from sort of rotating. Right, now the thumb release there has to be in line with that single screw hole and the slot. So then we should have the 2 holes in that in line with the thumb screw, and that is going to go in there in line with the hole and the slot. And to do that, what we do is we introduce it the little way, about 2/3 of the way, halfway, tighten the leg clamp up. And we just use some glue just to retain it. Let's put a bead around there, which in a theory is about halfway along the length of the rubber bush. So we just put a good bead of glue on there, like that. Again, nice and generous, a work your way up the bush a bit. You want a good glob of that, because that obviously is going to have some holding duties to do, and then just simply push it in, make sure it's all in line, make sure that cock and release in line with that, in line with the slot there, like so. Right, easy. Introduce your screws. As I say, just tighten these down until they literally just touch the metal surface. Don't over tighten them. Very, very easy thing to do, but if you over tighten them, they just simply lose purchase. So just center them down. That's it, and stop. Same with the two underneath. One there. Manual screwdriver is probably even more desirable than electric. I'm just using that because that's the only thing to hand. Final screw. There you go. That's 3 screws, glue, cock and rod, all in line. And then the last thing to introduce is the actual cock and rod. Very hard to see. We'll do our best here for you. But if you're looking at that slot, you should be able to see a single hole. You just introduce your cocking rod into it, start to wind it in. There you go, nice and tight. If you're ever going to dry fire it, always open the head. And that just simply has that action now. There you go. And that's the head section now finished. Also to do, use the plastic cover, and that can now be disposed of. Ideally, I'd leave that to dry for 10-15 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next section, which is just introducing the battery. Okay, next stage is just to make up the battery pack, and for that you need your battery clip, 8 AA batteries, some sort of picking device. I'll just show you the reason for why that in a minute. Introduce your batteries in typical fashion. Flat ends, it's 8 AAA batteries in succession, 4 on each side. The flat ends go against the springs, as is pretty typical setup really for batteries. So put those in. It's harder though with AA batteries because they have less of a nub on one side. So introduce 4 either side. I did that. So flat ends in. When you introduce the batteries into the clip, because the clip tightens up the more batteries you put in it, working from the spring end, just put the little tiny screwdriver in there and just push it up to make sure that we get contact at all ends. Because what you can find is that the clip could be so tight it can actually hold the positive end away from the clip. There you go, so that now should be live. After that we use our duct tape. This is industrial roll, but actually the narrow roll is actually even better. And just bind it up. The reason why we're binding it up is to hold the batteries in place, because under firing, under recoil, they can actually slip down away from that action that you've just done there, which was to keep them forward. So we put tape on. It also stops the batteries from being forced out of the clip. There you go. Tear that. There you go. I always go over the end and just leave quite a bit of excess, and then just sort of fold it down, because that end again, quite soft, quite vulnerable. Massage the tape on so it's gripping in all directions. Make sure you run your fingers down the ridges, stuff like that. Doesn't have to be particularly neat, the tape, obviously make it neat if you wish to. It's more about grip really, and just holding the batteries into position. Now when we've got them in position, you should get a little foam strip. Just cut the foam strip in half, Okay, introduce, do you need nails for this job? Introduce the foam strip on either side. This is just to protect it basically from being inside that tube and rattling about and sort of bashing the batteries up. They do get quite a bit of recoil, felt recoil going through the bodies obviously, but better than the nuts, yeah. So always be sympathetic as to how you put your batteries in, make sure that you bind them well and everything else. If the unit should suddenly lose power after a shot, often it's the case that the batteries haven't been taped up well enough and they've slidden away from the connectors at the top, so they need to be stripped and redone. So it's always worth giving it as good a job as you can now. Right, once that's introduced, if you look inside your tube, you should see the battery clip, and there should be a piece of foam in there already, which has been threaded over the battery clip. We're going to use a second piece of foam as well to back up. Basically it's just a PP3 connector. Just connect your battery clip up, there you go, line it up. The connector is always better if it's on the bottom, so push that in, push the foam in and just slip it in there nice and centrally till it makes contact with the back end. Your other foam piece in, chase it in with that, and then finally your end bung, which is always better if you revert back to your mallet. This end bung is quite tight going in, but once it's been in there it does actually become looser so that it's easy to get out, believe it or not, after a while when you need to change the batteries. Oop. So we'll just put that back in, tack it up. There you go. There's a screw hole left at the top. So this is going to go right through into the plastic. So again, don't over tighten it, it's only there just to stop the bung. So as soon as it touches metal really, that's fine and dandy. So that's your battery in position. What I'd suggest now is, at this point, rather than before we introduce the end bung, is turn it on, get your electronic controller and try it, and you should hear the motor flip round. If the motor's flipping round, then generally all is well. You've got power to the electronics and you've got power to the release solenoid, so that's it for now. So you can turn that off if you're happy with that. Last stage, almost there, is the ground pin, and obviously the rubber recoil bush. That goes through there, and as you've guessed, it screws into the end bung there. You just sort of screw it in. Right, what I tend to do is stop it about there, get that relatively tight. That's about the sort of 2 o'clock position, and then that generally tightens it. It doesn't need to be force tight, that generally tightens up so that the spoon, if you like, is at the bottom, like that, all in line with the bottom. It doesn't matter if it's not absolutely perfect, provided it's at the bottom. The idea is that that digs into the ground, that comes up, the rubber buff absorbs recoil from the unit being pushed back into the ground. The ground pin there just stops the back end slipping out. So just your leg. So now if you turn it on, cock it, use your handset, and it's ready to go.